Every day, we see the darker side of the world around us. We witness how people can hurt others in ways that are hard to understand. It's a sad part of life, but it's something we can't ignore. As someone who dives into the world of crime, I'm here to share the most shocking stories and try to understand what drives people to do such things. I'm Michael, and today, I've got another unreal true crime story for you. The night was calm, almost too calm. Inside the grand Royal mansion, everything looked perfect. Beautiful windows, polished floors, and the kind of luxury most people could only dream of. To anyone on the outside, Mike and Susan seemed like the ideal couple living the perfect life. But behind closed doors, something terrible was about to happen. Just after midnight, a 911 call broke the silence. Mike's voice was shaky as he told the operator about a masked intruder who had broken into their home and attacked him and his wife. Police and paramedics rushed to the scene, but what they found inside wasn't what they expected. The house was a mess, blood on the floor, broken furniture, and signs of a violent struggle. But something about the scene didn't add up. There were no broken locks or smashed windows, and the security cameras seemed to have gaps in their recordings. What started as a simple story about a home invasion quickly turned into something much more complicated. What really happened that night? Who was telling the truth? And what secrets were hidden inside the Royal home? Michael Royal and his wife Susan were the picture of perfection, or so it seemed. Known for their glamorous lifestyle, the couple was often seen at exclusive restaurants and exotic resorts, radiating the aura of a flawless union. Their opulent mansion in the prestigious neighborhood of Naplesville, Florida, stood as a testament to their apparent success. With a meticulously landscaped garden, a glistening pool, and sleek, modern interiors, their home mirrored their public image. Michael, a self-made millionaire, seemed to turn everything he touched to gold, and Susan appeared to be his crowning jewel. But beyond the shimmering facade of their marriage lay hidden fractures. Before Susan, there was Dee Hoffman, Michael's first love. They met as young students at the University of Florida, where Michael was already charting his ambitious course toward a prosperous future. Their romance blossomed into a marriage that lasted 25 years. Dee often described Michael as a kind, dependable man who never raised his voice, let alone a hand. Yet, his relentless pursuit of success took its toll. Long business trips and countless hours away from home strained their relationship, culminating in a quiet divorce in 2005. Michael's life took a new turn when he met Susan, a 38-year-old nurse, through an online dating platform. With her vibrant personality and zest for life, Susan captivated Michael instantly. Their whirlwind romance led to her moving into his home, replacing the life Dee had left behind. By August 2007, they were married, transforming the mansion into the backdrop of their new chapter together. Susan, who had left her career in hospice care to manage their household, was known for her strong-willed nature. She exerted significant influence over Michael's decisions, and her dominant personality often surfaced in the way she ran their lives. To be closer to Susan, Michael even scaled back his business ventures, purchasing a dental clinic and cutting down on travel. Despite his efforts, the tension between them grew steadily over the years. Those closest to the couple observed cracks in their relationship, particularly in Susan's interactions with Michael's daughters. Susan had an especially fraught relationship with Caroline, Michael's eldest. Tensions flared as Susan accused Michael of prioritizing Caroline over their marriage, while Caroline resented Susan for trying to edge her out of her father's life. Caroline often noted Susan's tendency to overindulge in alcohol, though Susan maintained her composure even after several drinks. By 2015, the once idyllic union had begun to unravel. Things came to a head in 2017 when Caroline started planning her wedding. Michael, determined to give his daughter the perfect day, set aside $100,000 for the celebration. While Susan begrudgingly agreed to the expenditure, the event became a flashpoint, exposing the simmering resentment within the family. As the cost of Caroline's wedding spiraled beyond $250,000, tensions between Michael and his wife, Susan, reached a boiling point. She lashed out, throwing a phone at Michael and hitting him. Yet, to everyone's surprise, it was Susan who called the police after the altercation. Perhaps she intended to control the narrative, but things didn't unfold as she'd planned. When officers arrived at the Royal residence, they found signs of a struggle. A shattered phone on the floor, overturned furniture, and a palpable tension between the couple. Susan, emotional and frantic, provided a fragmented account of what had happened, while Michael, visibly shaken, offered his version. The officers advised Susan to leave the house temporarily, hoping to de-escalate the situation. 3 weeks after the wedding, Michael confided in Caroline about his struggles with Susan, revealing a disturbing truth. He admitted she had physically confronted him on multiple occasions, and Caroline immediately believed him. At the wedding, she had noticed a faint white scar on his cheek but hadn't asked about it. Now, Michael showed her photos of injuries, evidence of a violent outburst in which Susan had attacked him with a knife. That incident had led to her arrest, but was it an isolated event or just one chapter in a larger story of turmoil behind closed doors? Susan agreed but didn't follow through. Instead, she stayed, trying to convince Michael to reconcile. By evening, Michael decided to take her out to dinner, hoping to mend their fractured relationship. The ambience of the restaurant, the soft glow of candlelight and the soothing sound of water, belied the storm brewing between them. Michael had envisioned a peaceful evening, a chance to reconnect, but Susan's hardened expression and sharp words shattered that hope. Their conversation veered into familiar territory. Her resentment over the wedding, her accusations of betrayal, and her demand for unwavering attention from him. The dinner ended abruptly. Michael, frustrated and defeated, tossed cash on the table and left. Alone at the table, Susan stared blankly, replaying the argument in her mind. Determined not to lose control, she sent him a pointed message. "Good luck with your daughter. I'm filing for divorce." Moments later, she followed up with another. "You have serious issues with your daughter. I will not tolerate this behavior." Back at their mansion, Susan returned to the guest room, the night's events weighing heavily on her. Shortly after midnight, Michael appeared at the door, his face a mask of anger and despair. Their argument reignited, escalating faster than ever before. Susan felt a sharp, searing pain in her abdomen and realized, to her horror, that Michael was holding a knife. Panic consumed her as he struck again, blood dripping down her arm. The confrontation had gone beyond words. This was a fight for survival. Despite her injuries, Susan's will to live ignited her determination. She whispered through her pain, desperately trying to de-escalate. "Fine, I won't file for divorce. I won't leave you." Her words made Michael stop for a moment, his grip on the knife easing. The wild look in his eyes softened, just for a second, revealing a glimpse of the man Susan once knew. In that brief pause, everything shifted. But for Susan, it was a chilling reminder of just how much their marriage had fallen apart. After the terrifying confrontation, Michael seemed to switch into panic mode. He quickly hid the knife, grabbed a few things, and started crafting a new story. "It was a stranger," he told Susan, his voice shaking but firm. "Someone in a mask. Just go with that and everything will be fine." Weak and scared, Susan nodded. At that moment she felt like she had no other choice. But once Susan reached the safety of the hospital, she couldn't stay silent. As doctors treated her wounds, she began telling her side of the story to anyone who would listen: nurses, investigators, anyone who came near. The next few hours were a whirlwind of police interviews, urgent phone calls, and tense conversations in hospital hallways. Meanwhile, Michael worked hard to control the narrative, repeating the story of a masked intruder and even deleting parts of the security footage, thinking it would erase any evidence of the truth. When police returned to the Royal home, they quickly noticed holes in Michael's story. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no shattered windows. The inconsistencies added up fast, but Michael, always quick on his feet, shifted gears. "Maybe the doors were unlocked," he suggested. "Someone could have snuck in while we were asleep." His calm and confident delivery almost made the story believable. However, investigators soon uncovered security footage from the restaurant where Michael and Susan had eaten earlier that evening. The video showed them leaving separately, clearly upset, and entering their home without speaking to each other. It didn't match Michael's claims, and suspicions grew. The case took a sharp turn when Michael was arrested. His first call was to his daughter Caroline. His voice was calm but full of urgency. "Caroline, I didn't do anything," he pleaded. "Call my lawyer. Get me out of here." Caroline, once his strongest supporter, was now faced with a heartbreaking conflict. How could she reconcile the father she loved with the man at the center of such a dark and horrifying case? News of Michael's arrest spread rapidly, shaking his social circles and leaving those who knew him in disbelief. Dee, his ex-wife of 25 years, was stunned. "Michael was always gentle, always kind," she said. "I can't believe he could be capable of this." Friends described him as a level-headed and rational man, even under pressure. But the prosecution painted a starkly different picture: a man accustomed to control who unraveled at the thought of losing it. According to the prosecution, Michael's fears of divorce and financial loss drove him to a reckless, premeditated act. They argued that Susan's potential claim to half of his assets had pushed him to the brink, leading to the violent confrontation. Michael's defense team, meanwhile, worked to frame the incident as a tragic accident. They maintained that the couple had concocted the intruder story in a moment of panic and claimed Michael had never intended to harm Susan. At his first court appearance in February, Michael shared his version of events. He admitted to the argument at the restaurant and the subsequent tension at home. He claimed that, later that night, he had gone to the guest room to reconcile with Susan, only to find her holding a knife in distress. Michael described a struggle to disarm her, during which the knife grazed her abdomen. He insisted it was an accident, not an assault. But cracks in his account were glaring. For instance, Michael claimed that after the incident, the couple sat on the bed discussing travel plans and the future as though nothing had happened. The absurdity of the claim, imagining a couple chatting about vacations while bleeding from severe wounds, strained credibility. The investigation uncovered further damning evidence. Blood wasn't just on the bed. It was smeared on the walls, the floor, and even the bathroom mirror. These grim details painted a far darker and more violent picture than Michael's claim of an accidental struggle. As the trial went on, it became clear that Michael's carefully crafted version of events was falling apart. The calm and composed image he had spent years building was crumbling, exposing a much darker side. The truth about that night remained tangled in conflicting stories, but one thing was certain: Michael's life, as he knew it, would never be the same. The tension in the courtroom grew with each new revelation, making it clear that there was more to the story. During his testimony, Michael shared a startling moment from that fateful night. He claimed that their dog jumped on the bed, distracting him just long enough for Susan to grab the knife again and cut her wrists. According to Michael, she was crying, saying she was terrified of going to jail and didn't know what to do. It was a dramatic statement, but as the trial continued, it became harder to tell where the truth ended and the lies began. Knowing the police would soon uncover fragments of the truth, Michael claimed he turned off the cameras to avoid being wrongfully accused. Minutes later, he made the call to emergency services, fabricating the story of a masked intruder. However, this hastily constructed lie quickly began to collapse under scrutiny. Investigators recovered partial surveillance footage from the house, despite Michael's attempts to delete it. The remaining clips revealed a strained atmosphere between Michael and Susan in the hours leading up to the attack, raising serious doubts about his story. Medical experts further discredited his account, confirming that Susan's wounds were deliberate and precise, consistent with an intentional attack rather than a chaotic struggle. In court, the defense portrayed Michael as a man cornered in a toxic marriage. They presented evidence of Susan's alleged hostility, including past arrests for aggressive behavior and threatening messages she had sent Michael. One text read, "You'll regret the day you crossed me." The defense also highlighted posts Michael had written on online forums, where he described his marriage as a battleground. In these posts, he lamented constant accusations of infidelity and Susan's insistence that he sever ties with his daughter, Caroline. The defense's narrative painted Susan as an unstable partner, claiming her erratic behavior and thoughts of self-harm could have led her to stage the attack. Yet, Susan's legal team countered with sharp questions. If Michael truly feared for his safety, why hadn't he left the relationship? Why maintain the facade of a happy marriage? Most damningly, why fabricate a story about an intruder? The trial's turning point came when Michael's lawyers introduced a forensic expert to analyze the blood spatter evidence. The expert testified that the blood pattern suggested Susan's injuries occurred closer to 3 a.m., supporting Mike's claim that they had been inflicted just before the paramedics arrived. However, Susan insisted the attack happened around midnight, when she was asleep, and that Mike had struck first. Medical professionals testified that Susan's injuries were life-threatening and would have resulted in fatal blood loss within an hour without medical intervention. Michael's defense argued this proved his version of events, as Susan survived due to his timely call for help. Yet, this defense unraveled when the credibility of their forensic expert came under scrutiny. It was revealed that the expert had a scandalous past. His license had been suspended for ethical violations, and he had been implicated in a grotesque case involving the theft of organs from deceased individuals. Police had discovered a macabre collection of organs, including hearts and brains, stored in his refrigerator. The shocking revelation cast doubt on his findings and devastated Michael's defense strategy. Seizing the moment, Susan's attorneys argued that the blood evidence pointed to deliberate violence, not self-inflicted wounds. They claimed Michael had restrained Susan during the attack, making it impossible for her to fight back. Demonstrating in court, Susan showed how she believed Michael had placed the knife in her hand to stage the scene, then inflicted superficial wounds on himself to bolster his intruder narrative. As the trial progressed, the courtroom became a battleground for competing truths. Susan's lawyers painted her as a survivor of calculated domestic abuse, while Michael's team portrayed him as a desperate man trapped in a destructive relationship. As the investigation unfolded, even darker revelations about Michael's life came to light. Evidence showed that Michael had long been disengaged from his marriage. Despite his claims of working to mend their relationship, He had secretly been planning a future without Susan. Records of his registration on multiple dating sites surfaced, painting a picture of a man actively seeking connections with younger women and plotting a life that didn't include his wife. Susan's legal team seized this revelation, arguing that Michael had been dishonest from the start. They suggested the attack might have been premeditated, a calculated attempt to remove Susan from his life without suffering the financial fallout of a divorce. Prosecutors further argued that Michael's actions, from erasing surveillance footage to concocting the intruder story, were deliberate steps to create an alibi and avoid legal and financial consequences. The trial captured the nation's attention, turning into one of the most talked-about cases in recent history. Jurors sat silently, their expressions unreadable, as they listened to testimony from lawyers, witnesses, and forensic experts. Every word was carefully considered, every detail scrutinized. When the time came to deliver a verdict, it took them just 4 hours to decide. Michael Royschel, a 63-year-old businessman once admired for his success and composure, was found guilty of multiple charges, including attempted manslaughter, tampering with evidence, denying medical assistance, and intimidating a witness. The sentence was swift and severe. In December 2019, Michael was handed 30 years in prison, with no chance of parole. It seemed like the final chapter of a grim tale, but the story didn't end there. Rumors emerged that even behind bars, Michael wasn't ready to let go. Allegedly, he sought out someone to take care of Susan, a chilling suggestion that he might have been plotting against her from his prison cell. Although these claims sparked public outrage and led to a police investigation, there wasn't enough evidence to bring new charges. Still, the whispers of his continued malice further tarnished Michael's already infamous reputation. Meanwhile, Susan sought to rebuild her life, quietly filing for divorce as soon as Michael was arrested. She avoided media attention, offering no interviews or public statements, focusing instead on moving forward. But there was one unresolved issue: their home. The mansion that had once symbolized their love and later became the scene of their nightmare was now the center of a bitter legal battle. For Susan, the fight over the house wasn't just about money. It was a way to reclaim her independence and leave behind the horrors of her past. She was determined to secure her rightful share of the property, while Michael, even from prison, used his attorneys to block her at every turn. Susan ultimately prevailed in court, winning her claim to the house. Yet victory came at a steep cost. The home, with its polished floors and opulent decor, still bore the scars of that terrible night. It was a constant reminder of her pain, the blood she had shed, the terror she had endured, and the betrayal that had shattered her life. Was it a happy ending for Susan? Not entirely. She had survived and won in court, but the cost was immeasurable. Her life would never return to what it once was. What began as a tense dinner conversation spiraled into a bloody tragedy, culminating in her husband's imprisonment and a long, arduous road to recovery. As for Michael, the man who once enjoyed luxury, influence, and admiration, he now spends his days in a stark prison cell, stripped of his wealth, his control, and the respect he once commanded. Thanks for tuning in to Unreal True Crime. If you're intrigued by mysteries from around the world, check out our new channel, Latin Crimes, where we dive into the gripping true crime stories of Latin America. Don't miss out. Subscribe now for more thrilling investigations.